Hello my gays and weebs. So I've already made a video about not liking how Season 2 of The Promised Neverland is going, and I talked about the Norman reveal as an example of how they botched manga execution. I do stand by thinking how he was brought back was lacking, but now that we've seen what the anime is doing with him, I can at least say I don't think it's all bad. I do want to give the anime a chance because, as sad as I am to miss Goldie Pond, the arc of bringing Norman back and what he does after was my favorite. So it would be a lie to say that I'm not a little bit excited to get to see all of that. But of course it still does leave the question of, is this as good as it could be? Is it better? Or is the next arc we're being brought to a step above episodes 4 and 5, but still not capturing the height of Season 1 or even the first 3 episodes of Season 2? So, what the heck, let's talk about Norman. Both manga Norman and anime Norman and his incredible character arc that might be good. Yeah, my hope hasn't been fully restored, and I'm still upset about the rushed timing and the plot holes that have been opened in a previously very well-crafted and believable narrative. But episode 6 was a step in the right direction, and I'm not going to just focus on the bad when there are things that have worked. But let's get into this. And, spoilers for the anime and the manga, since I'm going to be talking about both in depth. Also, another side note that once again I am going to be using as many clips from the show as I can, but I also don't want to get copyright claims, and I am working hard to push this video out. So we're gonna also be using clips from the CMV I filmed 2 years ago again, as well as some b-roll of my manga Norman cosplay, because I've made this cape a year ago and can finally use it for a video, so yay. Before I can get into Season 2, I want to talk about Norman and his character arc as a whole. To do this, we're going to have to go back to Season 1, and then dip a bit into the manga, and finally where the arc will be going in the anime, if, do that. So I've said before that I think Season 1 is a masterpiece, and I think that it does a good job of hitting all of Norman's character beats. I think his initial arc is not only pretty straightforward, but not really about him. Actually, I would say that while he's one of the 3 main characters, a lot of his role in the story is to push Emma and Ray to where they have to be growth-wise. You could also argue, though, that Ray does the same for both of them, and Emma at times for Ray and Norman, but anyways. Out of the 3 of them, I also think that Norman is the most anime protagonist, which is why we don't expect that he's going to be the one who's killed off. I mean, not really killed off, but, a lot of the plot is in his control, but that's because the action of the story is seeing the other 2, but mostly Emma, react to him. There's also him reacting to Ray because a lot of the first arc is us not getting to see what's going on inside Ray's head, but Norman is the one who's driving the story. Anyway, if I were to sum up Norman's motivation for the escape arc, I think we can split it into 2 wants. The want to live and the want for Emma and everyone else to live. But it's important to understand that out of all of them, Norman is the most scared of death. When seeing Connie's dead body and realizing the truth, Emma's first thought is fear for her family, but Norman's is the natural, I don't want to die. So, of course, he's the one who's going to die. Or, again, not really, because he doesn't, but since he and the other main characters exit this arc thinking he does, and he does get shipped out, which until later we think is synonymous with death. Until being told he's going to be shipped out, Norman's 2 wants work together. But when Isabella breaks Emma's leg, a scene that is just so haunting, really, that was such a good example of the stakes being raised. But when this happens and he's told he's going to die in 2 days, he's at a crossroad. If he selfishly acts on the plan that Ray and Emma hastily make to keep him alive, he knows that it's very likely that it will be impossible for them to escape. So he makes the choice to prioritize the life of his family over his own. And we get this beautiful scene that I honestly thought was done better in the anime, where we have no internal monologue and can just project what this kid might be thinking as he silently breaks down, then builds himself back up, determined to do what he has to do. I'm gonna argue that this is the climax of his arc in Season 1, because this is where all of his actions so far are determined, and when he becomes a support pushing Emma to carry the rest of the story. Because I don't feel like crying, let's skip over talking about the goodbye scenes and how much it hurts to see Ray understand that there's nothing they can do but Emma keep fighting until the last second to save him. Man, were you crying as much as I was when I first watched this? Because I was a wreck. Anyway, the next time we see Norman is in Lambda. And unless we get a flashback, I'm not sure we're actually going to get to see Lambda animated, which is a bit of a shame since the level of which humans are running it speaks a lot to the message of who the real enemy is. But in the manga, we establish Norman is alive by getting to see what happened when he was shipped out. We meet Big Bad Peter Rotary through Norman. And since he's in the anime opening, I assume he's going to show up at some point in the season. But what's cool about implementing him early is that we have more time to wonder about him. Anyway, in the anime we meet Norman the same time Emma and Ray do, without the foreshadowing, without knowing what Lambda is, and without a face to who's essentially behind all of this. And it doesn't feel as natural. Without the build-up, Norman coming back seems both too fast and out of left field, whereas initially the readers understood where he was, what he was working towards, and got a bit of foreshadowing that our third main character is going to be important again, and that at some point we're going to get a reunion, but like Norman, we're going to have to suffer through waiting for it. Also, as this is going, Emma is at Goldie Pond, and during this arc we see a lot of her connection with Norman, even though she thinks he's dead, guiding her. At the moment she thinks she might be dying, she sees him, and not because she's passing into that plane of existence, since, he wouldn't be there since he's alive, but because it's his memory that is pushing her forward and keeping her fighting. We also see this in Ray when he gets separated from her and is told that it will be impossible to save her, but knows that he won't be able to face Norman in the next life if he lets something happen to her. There's also the biggest missed opportunity that I really hope we're gonna come back to in episode 7, and that's Minerva Norman. We meet post-time skip Norman before knowing who he is. But, most of us saw white hair and the cliffhanger that the author left him on before and connected the dots. But whether you knew it was him or not doesn't matter because he's established not as the character we know, but as William Minerva, who, yes, is dead. So that adds to the mystery of who he really is, and the intensity of the scene that we meet him in. But let's first backtrack a bit. When Emma and Ray are being taught about the world by Sunju, in the manga he mentions how farms like Gracefield are only for the really rich demons. Normal demons get their human meat, similar to the way that fast food chains get their chickens. And we see this brief image of the non-special grade farms. And yes, we got body parts in episode 5, but that doesn't really compare to the image of humans being lab-grown, fully alive yet unaware to be eaten. We meet this new Minerva and the Lambda crew after they have killed the demons working at a non-special grade farm. He tells them to let the humans out of their restraints. They, of course, can't even move because they aren't fully conscious, have never lived enough to know how to control their bodies, but Minerva Norman sees this as giving them what little control they can have before ending their pain forever, which means burning the farm. And that's kind of fucking epic. Yes, get Zazzy killing 2 demons, but that's not on the same scale. As the manga goes on, we get the reunion scene and the understanding of Norman's plan. We see how all of this fighting and trying to gain control of this world and save the other children has twisted Norman. This is where I also think the fact that we meet Peter Rotary through Norman is important, because Norman does become the opposite of the human who will keep the cattle children as cattle by force by being the human who will destroy the world that makes them cattle children. What sacrifice means twists as we see that Norman's not just sacrificing the demons for the world he wants to create, but himself. And here we get Dark Norman, which we did get a glimpse of at the end of episode 6, and I honestly did enjoy that bit and hope that we're going to get more of that in the future. As Norman tells us his plan, we're supposed to disagree with him, but not just because it's ethically wrong. It is, but also because we care about him. And like Emma and Ray, but unlike the Lambda kids, we can see how this is destroying him. But bringing things back to the anime for a moment, I think that the explanation scene of how the demons work and what he plans to do was better in the anime, because it's the kind of scene that is always going to be better heard than read. Instead of an information dump, we get pretty much the same dialogue, but with the hopeful but slightly sinister score, harkening us back to season 1 where it was Norman's words and planning that led us to escaping. We see hope and joy accented by Emma's hesitance. So yes, I think this bit was done well. And while there's less of a dramatic build of after years finally understanding how the demons work, and after encountering different types of demons so that we have then experience to refer to, as well as an audience being more than just the Gracefield escapees, so that we can see how this world Norman wants to build affects the different characters. Still, I think that having the score that calls back to the first season made this scene live up to the hype, even with the sacrifice of what was cut before. So I don't want to go into heavy detail about what happens in the manga after this, aside from, what's obvious. But as I said before, in terms of manga arcs, I think Norman's is the best. That's, of course, only my opinion, but I think from finding him again to the moment that he comes back to them emotionally is the manga at its best. We see him ignore Emma and Ray and be forced to confront what he's become, and that he doesn't have to do this alone. Kinda like Ray in Season 1. Really, I think Norman's overall arc is getting back to where he was at Season 1. First, he learns how to sacrifice what he wants for the people he cares about, but overall, he has to learn to let go of this self-sacrificial mindset, allowing himself to believe in the people around him, and allowing himself to live. Which, like I just said, is the same as Ray's arc in the first season, but that's what's so beautiful about the two of them being foils for each other. I think Norman's arc ends the moment he comes back to Emma and Ray. If we talk about what a climax is, then it's the moment that determines everything that's going to happen. For Norman, it's when he accepts that he doesn't have to shoulder a burden alone, that he's allowed to be weak, and most importantly, that he's allowed to hope for his own future, exactly what he let go in the heartbreaking scene in Season 1. That scene is him letting go of his desire to live, and the moment where he hugs both Ray and Emma before he's shipped out is him letting go of the two of them because he loves them. Right here, we have the inverse of both, in not the hug goodbye, but the hug as he comes back to the two of them, again, because he loves them. And also comes back to his own desire to live in a happy and safe world with the people he cares about. The end. Not of the story, and not of Norman's involvement in the story, but of his character journey. Because while he still does cool stuff after this, since he's reached where he has to be, it's mainly as backup for Emma. And who wouldn't want to be backup for Emma? Emma is best girl, fight me. Or fight Emma. She'd win. Also, this is less about Norman's personal arc, but we get 3 examples of the hug. The 2 I went into, Norman hugging Ray and Emma, and the one in the middle where Ray hugs Emma and Norman. Which for Ray, I think is the opposite of letting Norman go, and also further signifies that at this point the two of them have swapped places. And I did enjoy the anime's adaptation of this moment. I don't think it was as emotional without the draw out, but I think it was sweet, and hearing the voice actors deliver it was nice. But there is more I want to say about the meaning behind the moment, so let's put a pin in that. I think what the manga does a great job is holding a mirror to itself. We see it in Norman, we see it in Ray, and Isabella, and Hugo, but yeah, I'm focusing on Norman here. So I've made a whole video on how time is lost and how that disrupts the suspension of disbelief. And with Norman, I do think that's a large part of the problem, because we and the characters didn't have to play the waiting game of not knowing what he was doing or if he was alive. Well, the characters definitely thought he was dead. But the timing isn't the only thing that I have an issue with. The air of mystery is gone. The years of us as an audience, as well as Emma not seeing Norman, reminds us that he's not the same person. But if we ignore the speedrun element, that doesn't mean the problems are gone. Sure, Norman has Team Lambda now, but he's not Minerva. And, okay, look, I'm not gonna argue this entire arc is ruined because he looks like he just walked out of a shoujo boarding school anime, but let's take a moment to talk about the character design and why Norman does not have the look of manga Norman. Character design is never on accident, every choice made is intentional, like how Emma's clothes change in Goldie Pond, not just because they gave her new clothes since the old ones were dirty, which, yes, they did, and yes, they were, but her wearing the bright-colored outfit and the pins in her hair symbolizes her becoming one with that team, and launching into this battle not as an outsider, but as one of them. So let's take this Norman with this design versus the manga design. Yes, it's similar, but I think by having this younger Norman wearing the clothes that a younger Norman would wear, the image loses the connection he has both to Minerva, but also as an inverse of the Rotries. It doesn't make us see him as an adult, and yes, I know he's not an adult, he's a child desperately and confidently behaving as an adult. No, as a god. And the clothes is part of the mask. And this doesn't look like a kid who's trying to be god. He looks like Norman, Season 1 Norman, the Norman that we lost. and the design is too close and too juvenile for him to fill the shoes he needs to. Also, while I know I said that the mystery is part of what sells it, I think we also do need a bit more context before we see him again, and a kind of show, not tell context that he gives us after the fact. First, as I said before, meeting Peter Rattray through Norman is interesting since while Norman isn't our protagonist, he is the one who has the most interactions with the big bad. It also sets up well with Norman's extreme actions for the good of the humans, making him basically the same as the Rattrays. But most of all, there's Lambda. We don't get a lot of information about what goes on in Lambda until we're back with Norman, but it's established as scarier than Gracefield, and unlike Emma and Ray, we see Norman alone. We're stuck with the tense knowing that something could happen to Norman at any moment, but most importantly, we see the scary farm full of adults that aren't even hiding that this is a farm, and we have no idea how he's going to get out. But he does. Then there's how the non-special grade farms are presented to us, and how they're established as something horrifying and scary, and we don't know how the kids are going to stop this, but then Norman just burns one to the ground. We see two giant obstacles and Norman's ability to just barrel through them, or more burn through them because he's taken a page out of Ray's book. This makes Norman more threatening when he becomes a force that we're going to have to divert, but also so much sadder because we see him as, again, a child trying to be a god, but we know all the reasons why he thinks not only that he has to do this, but that only he can. Given that the time skip was shortened, I do find it more believable that instead of escaping and destroying Lambda on his own, Norman had help and wasn't able to take the whole thing down. But my problem with Lambda still being around, as well as my problem with not seeing him burn down the other farms and not having him build his own hideout, is that it really lowers the stakes. Again, it would not have been possible in the time skip that we had, which is why I don't understand why instead of a year we couldn't have at least had 2. Like, they could have easily skipped over living in the shelter for a year and a half, then the humans finding them, and them spending a few months lying low, so everyone could be a bit older and Norman could be a bit more badass. Because the hype of manga Norman, what makes it so cool and scary and sad about him is that this boy who is almost 14 not only wants to commit demon genocide, but he can. He is 100% capable. And we know this because we see everything that he has accomplished without help. And that's why he's more than just Norman, he's Minerva. It's why all the other children see him as a god. And why Emma and Ray have to force him to accept that he's still just a kid and he's allowed to let them help him. But a lot of that is lost in having him already need help and already depend on others and not having built anything. But if we take all of that away and ignore that it's just kind of funny to see these teenagers following this tiny boy, then I do really enjoy what the anime is doing with Norman. At least the last bit of episode 6 is properly chilling, and I like seeing the air of authority he has. Team Lambda is being done really well. It was really cool to see all of them animated. Barbara can step on me. Should I keep that in the video? I'm gonna keep that in the video. And I really like the scene between the group of them and Ray and Emma went. Honestly, if they keep going with what they did in this episode, I do have hope for getting Norman's arc done, if not to the glorious extent that it was in the manga, then at least well. Actually, and this is where the pin I put is gonna come back, if there's a character that I think the season is screwing over, it's Ray. Okay, so I think the Ray confronting Emma scene on its own is good. It's pretty much the same thing we got in the manga, but with the addition of the score that blends into Isabella's lullaby and reminds us of them making plans back in season 1, which heightens the emotion we're feeling by this recall. But I don't really believe it. Again, it's a nice moment. But first there's the fact that we haven't even established that there might be a way to get to the 7 walls, and that Emma and Ray have already been working towards a way to get to the human world. In the manga, Norman did find them at a hopeless moment, but it was very much a moment. Before that, and in the shelter and post-Goldie Pond, they were doing fine because they're pretty freaking capable. But going from Emma's down moment to Norman's capable one is hard when we haven't gotten the chance to see her leadership. So I feel like her capability is being done dirty. And then there's Ray. I like him confronting her. I like the way his calm juxtaposes her yelling at him, and in the whole Norman wants genocide scene, we saw him watching her, much like we the audience were. But this is coming off of so little of the two of them working together without Norman, which is one of my main problems of the arc skipping. Because for this adaptation, it doesn't really hurt the narrative to skip characters they don't introduce, but it does hurt to skip development between your main characters. And we lost that with Emma and Ray. In the manga, this moment was after multiple arcs of Ray standing by Emma's side, and having to see things her way, much like Norman did in season 1, because they're foils for each other. In the manga, we see Ray go from not trusting her and thinking she's foolish to immediately following her intuition. This scene isn't just, hey, you don't like this, and because you're the main character and I'm your support, we're gonna do our own thing now. It's, hey, there is not alternatives right now, but I think you'll find one because I've seen you do so again and again. And it might be logical to do what Norman says, but I trust you more than I trust logic, so I'll follow you instead. It's a benchmark to how Ray has grown and a contrast to what Norman has lost. And we can't get the full extent of that if we don't actually see any of that growth. And without it, the satisfaction of seeing Ray and Norman swap positions from where they were in season 1 isn't gonna hit as hard, and for that, I am disappointed. So, yeah, we're more than halfway into this, and I'm not really sure how far into this arc we're gonna get. I'm interested in seeing more of Norman, and my hopes are a bit higher than they were 2 weeks ago, but definitely not as high as they were after episode 1. So I don't really want to be that YouTuber that makes a video for every episode that comes out of this show, and since we only have 5 more, I'm going to try to hold out and cap this season off with one last essay, especially since I do think it's going in a better direction than when I made my last video. That being said, since, and I think I've made this clear that I love talking about the manga, I am considering making a video on my missing gay dad, why his arc was so good, and yeah, unfortunately I guess I can't talk about him and not mention the missed opportunity, but I will try to leave season 2 alone. Unless it does something so shocking that I feel I can't wait. And I know a lot of people are enjoying the anime so far, and that a good handful will get mad at me and tell me so in the comment section. But again, all of this is my opinion. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm making an argument, and if you disagree, then power to you. I'm not saying I completely dislike the season either, but even if this episode was a step in the right direction, it's still so far from what it could have been, and as someone who cares way too much about the story, I'm gonna critique it. Anyway, thanks for watching if you made it this far. I appreciate it. Let me know if you want to see more videos like this. I like writing essays, I like talking about anime, and it's fun to kind of edit the cosplay stuff over my voiceover. But that's all for now. I'll see you guys in the next video, or you'll see me, because that's how this works.